Hello, folks. Today we want to talk about, can Bitcoin reach $150,000? And if it can, what are the drivers behind it? So, before we do that, let's first look at gold. So, gold has been used as a store of value for a long time. In fact, gold coins were first used around 550 BC. So, if you look at today, the total world gold reserves are around 212,000 tons. And the gold price, an estimate of the gold price is $2,680 per ounce. So that gives us a total value for all the gold reserves as $20,000 billion. So, how does this compare to Bitcoin? So, we know that 19.5 million approximately Bitcoins have already been mined, and 1.5 million Bitcoins are remaining to be mined. And that means there's going to be a total of 21 million units of Bitcoin. And recently, the Bitcoin price has been around 100,000 US dollars. So that gives us a total Bitcoin value of 2,100 dollars billion dollars. So now let's compare Bitcoin versus gold. So earlier we said the total gold value in the world is about 20,000 billion dollars. And the total Bitcoin value is about $2,000 billion. So that's approximately 10% of all the gold value out there. Now, if you want to forecast a price of about 150,000 US dollars for a Bitcoin, the total Bitcoin value needs to go up to 3,200 billion US dollars, which is approximately 16% of all the gold value out there today. So, in order to do that, we see that the future Bitcoin value versus the current Bitcoin value is going to be 1,115 billion US dollars. So, let's talk about the Bitcoin demand drivers. So, first of all, what we need is crypto friendly regulation, which makes it easy for people to trade Bitcoin, to hold Bitcoin, and this has to be across countries. This will make it easy for people to buy Bitcoin. The second is wider adoption of Bitcoin across financial institutions. You've already seen institutions like BlackRock introducing an ETF. And as more institutions introduce ETFs, there will be a wider adoption. Another thing is, and we've seen this by Fidelity, they had a paper for their investors where they were recommending a small percentage of allocation in their retirement savings to Bitcoin, just so that you have a small exposure to Bitcoin. And as we see more people get comfortable with Bitcoin, we will see that adoption. And lastly, countries that are facing high inflation or they're going through unstable economies, people in those countries will be flocking to Bitcoin, looking for to put their savings in a much more stable um, or inflation protected store of value. So now let's look at an actual scenario that I've considered here where I'm trying to understand, okay, what does Bitcoin adoption look like in the US? And the way I've approached this is I've tried to look at the labor force in the US by different age groups. And then what does average retirement savings look like for each of those age groups? And from there, I've tried to calculate the total retirement. And from there, I've applied this Bitcoin adoption rate. And again, this is based on the paper that Fidelity published on Bitcoin, where they were recommending their customers that it makes sense to start off with, let's say, 2% exposure to Bitcoin. So I've applied a 2% adoption to the more younger age groups. And then the 45 to 54, I've applied a 1%. And then the 55 to 64, I've applied a half a percentage point. So Once you calculate the amount of retirement savings by these age groups that will invest in Bitcoin, you get a total of about 286 billion US dollars. Now, remember earlier I told you that forecasted Bitcoin price of 150,000 US dollars. For that to happen, the current total Bitcoin value needs to increase by 1,115 billion US dollars. So if you look at this 286, it's already about 26 to 27% of that value. Now, obviously, this is just one scenario here. Obviously, there will be other demand drivers. So in the next few videos, I might consider trying to quantify the effect of that. But this, in a concrete way, paves a path for how Bitcoin can actually rise to $150,000 in the future. All right, guys, thank you for listening. And please provide any suggestions or feedback based on the video.